I want to talk to you about the elections and how people make decisions. So I'm going to start with a disclaimer first. So how many of you are bilingual? How many of you are bilingual? All right. I'm also bilingual. I am fluent in Democrat and Republican. As part of my job, I have been interviewing voters for 25 years, and I listen to everyone, and I get to hear how they think about things. So what I'm going to show you is how they do it. Now first I'm going to show you something really ugly, all right? So, ugly, sorry. So a lot of the work I do is based on mathematics, right? You might say, what does math have to do with politics? And for me, math is a way that you put things together. So, in other words, if you know a couple things about how people think about politics, if you know what they get excited about, if you know a little bit about what, you can't see it, what they remember, you can use math to help you think about, okay, what's possible and impossible. So a lot of what I do starts with mathematics, but I also speak English, and the rest of the presentation will be in English. So if you want the math translation, we'll do that later. As part of my job, I get to help people make decisions. That's what I really try and do. I help people make better decisions. I work with voters. I work with, as Mr. Schwartz talked about, I have leadership positions with the National Academy of Science and the National Science Foundation, and I try to help them with science education. I also work with world leaders. So that's me a couple months ago with the President of Colombia. Colombia is having a very important election on a peace referendum. So I'm happy that I get to do that. I'll answer questions about that. And I've been doing the same thing in Guatemala. So that's in the capital, that's the official Guatemalan flag. So I'm happy to talk about that. But mostly what I'm going to talk about now is America, right? The country we all know. So here's a question. How many of you think your parents are going to vote? Yeah? All right. And how many, is anyone or any of you guys old enough to vote? All right, excellent. Are you going to do it? Are you going to go vote? Are you guys going to vote? All right. Okay. So sometimes politics seems really complicated because every voter has a question. The question is, who should I vote for? Like, how do I think about policy? How do I think about questions like immigration and the economy and things of that nature? So I want to talk about this voter who has questions. And that voter could be someone like your parents or it could be like you. If you have questions about what's going on and why is Donald Trump saying this, why is Hillary Clinton saying that, and why are my parents all agitated, right? So these are some of the questions we'll look at. So there's 4 things we're going to talk about, okay? So first, why are so few voters fully informed about politics? Because that's a common complaint. The idea is that, voters should know a lot, and when you ask them questions, sometimes they don't. So why is that? We're going to ask that first. Yeah, do you have a... Okay, this is an interesting, so people know so little because the media is biased. So we're going to come back to that, all right? We're going to come back to that as a possibility. So that's the first question. The second question is, how much does a voter need to know? So if you're going to cast a vote in an election, how much do you actually need to know, right? The next question is, how do people learn about candidates? And then finally, and this is most important, I think, for people, of your age, should I be cynical? Because sometimes in politics, it's really easy to get down on the process. And what I want to ask is whether you should do that or whether you should be more optimistic. So those are our 4 questions, and let's run through it. Okay, so first, why are so few voters fully informed? So sometimes when people see a picture like this, they see Donald Trump. But sometimes people see the people behind Donald Trump, and they say, why are those people supporting Donald Trump? Or people look at a picture like this, and some people see Hillary Clinton, and other people say, how could anybody support Hillary Clinton? So this is about the people behind Donald Trump and behind Hillary Clinton. Why is it that people support them? So, there's a typical answer. If you really like one side, if you have a favorite candidate, and you're thinking about why people like the other candidate, there's a very simple explanation. So if you're asking the question, why are so many people supporting the other candidate, the answer we usually hear is, because they're stupid. Right? We get that answer a lot, because they're stupid. If they knew what I knew, they'd vote for my candidate. But what I'm going to show you now is that's rarely the case. People often have reasons for the candidate they're voting for. So let's look through this, okay? So, I'm going to start with a couple facts, all right? So here's an opportunity for a quiz question. If we think about what's important to know about politics, one of the questions they might ask is knowing what Congress does. Do any of you know how many laws Congress passes in a particular year, in an average year? Let's say like the last 15 years. What's the roughly? Let's say you get bonus points if you're within 25. How many laws per year does Congress pass? What do you think? How many think it's less than 50? How many think it's less than 50? All right. How many think it's between 50 and 100? How many think it's between 100 and 150? Okay. I love you all, but you guys got the answer wrong. Okay. So the answer is the answer is about 200 laws per year. 200 per year. How about the state of Michigan? The state of Michigan. How many laws does the state of Michigan pass per year on average? I'm not going to make you guess. It's about 200. 200 laws that the legislature passes. Now, some of you might be surprised by this, because you might hear that in Washington, the Republicans and Democrats disagree with one another, and the same is true in Lansing. And yet, they still pass a lot of laws. The reason is, and coming back to the media question, the media likes to cover controversy. And so, on the issues where Democrats and Republicans agree, they're never on the news, right? No one pays attention to that. It's when they disagree. So, this is an interesting thing. I want to tell you one other thing. How many of you have ever read a law? Like, have looked at a law and read it? Okay, a couple of you. Laws sometimes are kind of vague. Like, the legislature says, we want to accomplish something very general, but then they leave it to other people to figure that out. So people who work in government agencies. In Washington, this is called a rulemaking process. So after a law is written, people have to write rules to tell like the military, the police, and the hospitals, and the doctors, and everybody who works for the government in some way, exactly what the law means. Do you know how many pages of rules Washington produces every year? Okay, 82,000 on average. 82,000 pages, and every single one of those rules has the full force of law, right? So why am I telling you this? Because when it comes to being fully informed, there are two groups of people in America, okay? So who are they? There are two groups of Americans. The first group of people understands that there's so much going on in politics, and there's so many things, they understand that they're almost completely ignorant of everything that's going on. So that's one group of Americans. Who's the other group? The other group is delusional about how much they know. There is no third group. Politics is really complicated. There's a lot going on. But it's not too complicated for you and I to make some decisions that can help our communities, that can help our nations, and that can help our way of life. So how is that possible? When politics is so complicated, how is it that we make good decisions? All right, so let's turn to that. Right? So the first question, why are so few voters fully informed? It was a trick question. No voters are fully informed. Okay? Last trick question. Sorry. It's math. It's math. All right. So, how much does a voter need to know? If you're going to vote, how much do you need to know to cast a vote that can help yourself and your community? And the answer is, it's different for different people. Okay? So, the question is, how much do you need to know to be a good citizen? And I want to ask you I want you to think about this question in a different way. Suppose instead of saying, what should I know, suppose the question was, what should I eat? What should I eat? Okay? Is there a single answer for everyone? No. Okay? So, the answer depends what you're trying to do. If you're training to run a marathon, there's a certain diet that you want, right? It's food with a lot of water content, right, to help you run a marathon. If you're lifting weights, you need a diet with more protein. If you're the mayor of London, right, your diet probably requires a lot of coffee because you have to listen to some people early in the morning that you don't really like. All right? And then if you're a baby, I don't know how many of you know babies, but babies don't have teeth. And so some of the foods that you and I would want to eat, if you feed it to a baby, it ends really badly. Right? So, the answer to what should I eat is really depends on what you're trying to do and who you are. And the same is true in politics. The same is true in elections. Because if you're the president, there's a certain set of things you need to know. But if you're a voter or a member of a school board, there's a different set of things you need to know. Okay? So, if we're trying to think about what people should know, the question is, what are people trying to do when they vote? Okay? And what most people are trying to do is they're trying to make a set of decisions that are consistent with some moral or ethical values that they have. Right? So some people are really religious, and they try to vote consistently with the religious faith that they have. Others have a view about what good behavior is or what the future of the country should be like, and they vote that way. So lots of people have a very deep moral or ethical commitment that is the thing they're trying to do when they vote. All right? It's different for different people. One of the great things about the United States is we have people who have different values. We call it diversity and things of that nature. We have people with different points of view. We all have to work together for a country, but we work together using our differences. So another thing we want to do is make these choices really efficiently. Some people, I'm sure I have like the debate team over here, you guys want to read about politics 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And there are other people who just want to get it over with. They want to figure out which candidate is best for me and go on. So for most of us, some of us will run for elective office, right? One of you might even be president. Like, that would be cool. But a lot of people will probably be voters. That'll be like the main thing that we do, right? We'll also participate in volunteer things. One of the big political acts will be voting. So what do we need to know to vote? So how much does a voter need to know? So here's the only technical term I'm going to introduce. A binary choice. Does anybody know what a binary choice is? Oh, the sixth graders, do you know? Oh, I'm going to come over here. What do you think of volunteering? What do you think it is?
Something that
That's pretty good. So that's pretty close. A binary choice is one where you have two alternatives and you have to pick one. Right? So binary means like if you're trying to decide whether you like red or blue better, there are only two choices. That makes it binary. You have to choose one. For voters, a lot of our choices are binary. So no offense to people who like third parties. If you like third parties, great. Your candidate's not going to win. It's just math. It's not nothing personal. In many elections, particularly in November, there are two candidates that can win. So it's like a binary choice. Which one are you going to choose? And how much do you have to know to choose the right one? So, if we're going to ask the question, do you know enough to make a binary choice, to pick the best one out of two? Another way to think about this is, could you make a better or worse decision than a chip with a coin? Because if there are two choices and one is better, and a chip has a coin, and they use the coin to choose a candidate, they get the right answer half the time. So if you think that another voter is making the wrong vote, part of what you're saying is that they are dumber than a chip with a coin. Right? But now, suppose for a moment, suppose we had our presidential elections determined by chimps. But instead of giving them a coin that gave them the right answer 50% of the time, suppose we gave them a coin that gave them the right answer 51% of the time. So every chip gets a coin that gives them the right answer 51% of the time. What would happen if there was a right answer and all the chips used coins to determine who they would vote for? Would the electorate as a whole be able to choose the right answer? And again, this is just math, what I'm about to show you. Okay? So is a voter less confident in the coin? If you think or not, if there's one voter, the probability that they get the right answer is 51%. But if there are 1 million or 10 million chips, and all of them flip coins, and the coins give them the right answer 51% of the time, the probability that the electorate as the whole gets the right answer is nearly 100%. Right? Voters have to be just a little bit more likely to be correct than incorrect on average for majority rule to give you the right answer. right? So if you're asking, how much do people need to know when there's only two things to choose, it's not as much as you think. But now I'm going to make the problem even a little simpler, okay? So how much does a voter need to know? This is a traffic intersection in a big city, okay? How many of you drive? I know you're only over here, drivers. How many of you have ever been in a car? All right. Has anyone never been in a car? All right. Afterwards, I'll give you the horse version of this example.
I'm waiting for you.
All right? Now, when you're in a car at a busy intersection, the engineering problem is to try and get 150 people in dangerous vehicles through a small space in 90 seconds. That's what you're trying to do in traffic. 90 seconds, 100 people in dangerous vehicles. As an engineering problem, it's really hard because you have to think about how fast each of the cars can go, and how fast they can accelerate, and how fast they can brake. And then you have to think about the intention of each of the drivers, and what they can see and what they can't see. You also have to think about what the drivers are thinking about other drivers. Right? That's the engineering problem. But if you've ever driven or been in a car, you know that the person driving isn't solving that problem. And why is that? Because we have built a device that allows people to make this complex decision very simply. Okay? So in science we call this a cue, right? And a cue is a piece of information that simplifies a complex problem. What is the cue that we use in traffic? It's the traffic light. So, no, you shouldn't do this, but some people will be in a car with a cell phone in one hand and a coffee in the other, and they can make it through the intersection, right? Because what they do is they pay attention to this, all right? So now so we've just identified a pretty complex problem that we solve simply. And the question you might ask now is, well, do we have any traffic lights in politics? And it turns out we do. Okay? Political parties. Political parties, right? Political parties in politics serve a lot of the same role as traffic lights, right? You have these 2 or 3 people running for office, and they're trying to tell you something about themselves, and you're trying to figure out which of these candidates will do the best for my community and my family. And you don't know them, and you can't get to know them because maybe they're new, right? But then you find out that they're a Republican or a Democrat, and all of a sudden you know things about them, in the same way that you know things about the intentions of other drivers when you see a red light or a green light. Now, parties don't work this way for everyone, and by the way, traffic lights don't work this way for everyone too. But they're pretty good. They help people solve complex problems. So in politics, parties are like traffic lights. So the answer to question 2, how much does a voter need to know? The answer is different for different people. But for a lot of us who have to make simple choices, what we have to know is a little bit better. We have to be a little bit better than a chip of the coin. We have to have a traffic light, and we can make the same choices that we would have made if we knew a lot more. That's what my interviews show. That's my work shows. All right? So let's move to a different question now. Suppose you're not sure who to vote for, and the question is, how do you learn about politics? So what I want to talk about now is how to vote and learn. Okay? So there's our friend again. Right? And what I want to show you is here's one way of thinking about how voters learn. And the idea is there's this thing out there called truth. Truth, and you see truth on television, on the media. And you see truth, and you watch it, and it becomes part of you. The truth, and you just absorb the truth. So the one thing I want you to know about how people learn in politics is that the story I just told you is so far from what actually happens. It is not even remotely resembling of that. Okay? How we learn is different in politics. Okay? So these are brain cells. Everything you remember, everything you feel, everything you sense has a physical manifestation in brain cells. When we talk about learning, like learning seems magical, but what learning really is you get excited about something, you get motivated to look at something, some fuel and adrenaline sends blood flow upstairs, and it changes the shape and relationship of your brain cells, and that's what learning is. Why am I telling you this? Because it's true in politics as well, and the question is, how do we get people to learn about politics? We have to make them interested in the content. Okay? So an issue is, our brains were not built for politics. Our brains were built for going through the woods. Right? That's what they evolved for. Our brains are really great at smelling food and other odors that we want to keep away from. Right? Our brains are fantastic at seeing things we shouldn't walk into. But when it comes to other topics, our brains struggle a little bit. So that's a teletype. Right? You know what's cool about a teletype? That was the first machine that allowed people to communicate in real time when they weren't in the same space. So you can communicate with someone really far away. Now, if that's too abstract for you, you see the beginning of this tape here? That tape? That's like 140 characters. That's like the first Twitter. All right, so you can think of it that way. All right, here's a true story. I was telling Mr. Schwartz about this. Tay Diggs followed me on Twitter this morning. And the real Tay Diggs. He's a TV star. Some of you know who he is, right? I don't know why. But anyways, Twitter. So here's the bigger issue with political learning. When you think about how you're able to learn, the question is, how many things can you think about at a single moment? And it turns out our brain plays tricks on us. Here's a way to think about how big is your attention span. This is a true thing. How big is your attention span? Take whatever you're thinking about right now as your attention span, divide it by a large number, and you're closer. We have very limited ability to pay attention. A statistic from psychology is 7 plus or minus 2. And that's the number of things you can think about without thinking about it. So if I were to say, like Carmelo Anthony, right? For some people, all kinds of thoughts come up. And for other people, they're like, is that a kind of candy? Right? So the thing is, anything that just came to your mind is like one unit. It's called a chunk. Here's a way to think about the capacity of your memory. Have all of you seen a chessboard? All of you have seen a chessboard. All right. So when a chess expert and a chess novice approach a board, right, the chess expert can walk up to the board and see their first 5 moves. They look at the board, and just like some of you, when you heard Carmelo Anthony, you thought of all these things. The chess expert walks up to the board, and they see the first 5 moves. The novice at chess walks up to the board, and they say, oh, a horse. Wow. Wow, 2 horses. Where's the stable? Right? For the chess novice to construct a move, they'd have to think about all kinds of things to figure out where the horse goes, and they'd have to use up all of their memory. So in politics, if we're trying to get through people's attention, we have to meet all of the other things that are competing for attention. Like cell phones, right? Cell phones, that people think it's rude if you're talking to them and you're looking at a cell phone, right? Because you're not paying attention to them. I think that cell phones are a window to the soul. So the secret that people my age won't tell people your age is that when we were your age, we weren't paying attention to other people either. We just didn't have cell phones. We just nodded as if we were paying attention, but really we were thinking about something else. Right? So that's life, because attention is really limited. Right? We also have cat videos. It's not even. Yeah. Little kitties. So here's the thing. If you are trying to learn about politics, or if you're on the internet trying to get somebody's attention, if you're on the internet trying to build a business or trying to get support for a candidate, you're competing with cat videos. You're competing with everything on there for these little tiny parts of people's attention. That's our new reality. So sometimes we say, oh, you should learn about politics. But the reality is, if we want people to learn about politics, we have to come up with something that they want to watch instead of cat videos, right? Because attention is so limited. How do we do that? Okay? So the thing that we know now is the space for communicating about all kinds of issues, including politics, is more competitive than it's ever been. Some people ask me about the 2016 election. They say, why is it so kind of negative, or why is it so chaotic? And one of the reasons is the number of people who can express views about the candidates that other people can see is so much bigger this election than any previous election. Because everybody could be on Facebook or Twitter, right, or Instagram, right, or anything, saying whatever they want about candidates. Even 10 years ago, very few people could do that. So there's more and more competition in the competitive space. So if you want to learn about politics, right, people have to speak to you. They have to speak to your problems. And if you want to communicate about politics, right, what do you have to do, right? And And the idea is urgent, simple, and direct. This is the strategy that campaigns are now using. Urgent. If I want to talk to you about politics, I have to find out what's important in your life. That's my job. When I talk to the president of Colombia, I know the main pollsters in both parties, I know the main strategists. They know they're competing with cat videos and football, right? If they want to reach an audience, they have to find out what's important in your life and try and tell the story of the candidate in terms of your life. One of the mistakes, anybody know what Brexit is? Okay. You know, there was a campaign in Brexit, and one side understood this. The Leave side told stories, not all of them were true, about how voting no would directly affect their lives. And the Remain side told stories that were often not connected to people's actual lives. And when people thought about, should I vote Remain or Leave, some people voted Leave because they had a story about how it would affect their lives, whereas Remain was too abstract. Okay? So this is a thing, urgent, simple, and direct. It is now the main strategy that campaigns are using, because otherwise we lose the battle of attention. Right? Some people say, you know, maybe folks should be forced to pay attention to politics, but that's not how it works. Not in a free society. All right? So, how do you expand a political coalition? And this is true for the Trump campaign, and it's true for the Hillary Clinton campaign, and it's true for campaigns that you run at the school, for student council, or for a leadership position and other things. How do you build it? You have to earn attention. First, if I want you to listen to my appeal for why I should be on student council or someone else, I have to get your attention. But the way I get your attention is not by telling my story. The way I get attention is by telling your story. The way I get attention is by understanding my audience and what they want and trying to be responsive to them. Okay? If I can do that and I can discover what we have in common, we can come up with a reason for why we would vote for my candidate. Right? So if you ever run for student council, it's not about you. It's about your audience, and the question is, how can you best serve them? Right? That's a better key point. I want to show you one other thing about how people think about politics, and then we'll wrap up. In climate change, so I work with scientists a lot. How many of you guys know climate change is controversial? So some people think that the biggest difference in opinions about climate change is between the smart people and the not smart people. And it's not true. Okay, I'm going to show you how. So what you have here is a guy at Yale University. He did a science test. He did a general science test to gauge people's general science knowledge. Okay? So the higher you score, the better you do. And then he asked him a question. He said, is the Earth getting warmer mostly because of human activity or mostly because of natural patterns? So if it was just smart and not smart, you'd expect all the people who did well on the test to say one answer, and the people who were saying the people who didn't know so much to give the other answer. What you see instead is the blue line are people who call themselves Democrats, and the red line are people who call themselves conservatives. The people who disagree in this country most about climate change are the people who know a lot about it. The people who knew less about it have more common opinions. Again, this is part of a story, right? Remember at the beginning we like to say, why do people disagree with me? And the easier answer is because they're stupid. But when we look at it, we find out, well, actually, maybe there are other reasons, right? Maybe the difference is we want different things. I know this is, if you like, if you have a certain point of view, this isn't the graph you want to see, but I can produce it over and over again. All right? So how do voters learn? Right? They're trying to get cues that relate to values. So here's the last question for all of us. Should I be cynical? Should I be cynical? All right? So the answer is it's your choice, but let me show you something. Why do elections matter? It's because, you know, we're thinking about voting for that person. He's giving an appeal about how he thinks America should go forward. We're listening to this person, and she's giving an appeal about how America goes forward. But what they're all talking about, you know, and they're being divisive at this point because they have to, right? Elections focus on issues where candidates diverge. I'm going to tell you a secret. Okay, it's a true thing. I'm going to tell you a secret about Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. All right? They actually agree on almost everything. They agree on almost almost all of the Constitution except possibly one amendment. Right? They agree on so much about policy. In elections, what you have to do is draw attention to where you disagree. And the disagreements are important. But the fact is, none of them are talking about rearranging the states. None of them are talking about sort of having massive changes to property rights, like the things that are really critical to the nation. They don't want to talk about that. But in an election, you have an incentive to draw attention to differences. And then coming back to your question, and the media loves it, right? I'm not blaming, by the media I mean us, right? There are, CNN or MSNBC or Fox News could do a whole show on where people just agree with each other, and they're happy. And they run those shows, and no one watches them. So instead we have 24 hours of people yelling at each other because we like to watch it. For the same reason we like to watch football, or League of Legends, or wrestling, or whatever it is. Okay? But here's why it matters. Here's why it matters, right? The people who work in our military, the people who work on our hospitals, the people who work at our public universities and schools, right? These elections are about them. These people, right, are committing their lives to try and make things better for their community. And it's not magic and it doesn't fall from the sky. These are people who decide to commit their lives to us. And elections are about whether and how they'll get to do this. These are real people, and this is decisions. Politics isn't something that happens to us. Politics is us, right? In society, there are some things we agree on, and they're not politics. And there are other things we disagree on, and that's what we need politics for. And we can disagree before elections, but after elections, we have to work together, right? That's how it works, right? We still live in the same country after the election. And there are these people who give their lives, right, who spend all their time trying to help other people. And that's the great thing about elections, right? To try and figure out how to help them do their jobs better, right? So if we can figure out how to serve other people, how to communicate it effectively, how to speak directly to them, we can help those people do their jobs, right? And that can make things better. Now here's the last thing I'm going to leave you with. If you're tired of the negativity in politics, I have helped develop an app. So you can go to Google Chrome, right? It's called the No Smear app. So you can go to Google Chrome, and if you download the No Smear app, and then someone on your Twitter feed or your Facebook, they talk about politics, and then there's a potty word in there, and we have all the potty words, all the variations of potty words, all of them. We wrote the app. That's a smear. If you do that, it'll be blocked, and you'll get a cartoon of George Washington or Abraham Lincoln reminding you how awesome it is to be involved in politics. And if you want to see what the potty word was, there's a little click. But it's just a way to elevate the discourse. It's just a way to remind us of what's really important, as opposed to saying, calling each other names. So in conclusion, why are so voters fully informed? There are no fully informed voters. How much does a voter need to know? Depends what you're trying to do, and sometimes there are cues available. How do voters learn? We're trying to figure out how to link the choices to our values, right? And should I be cynical? I'd say the answer's up to you. But politics is people. Politics doesn't happen to you. You can make it better or make it not through your participation, even at any age, right? Don't let people tell you that you can't affect things, because you might not be able to affect who's president, but you can affect how people live in your school and your community, and you can do that today if you're effective in politics. So thank you very much, and I'll take a couple questions.